What's up? Today I'm going to show you 3 well-tested recipes for perfectly cooked, delicious rice dishes that aren't just sides, but are the main event. The last of which has both the craziest texture and the deepest flavor of any rice dish I've ever had.
Ooh, baby, look at that. You did it. It smells like movie theater popcorn too.
First up is a deceptively simple rice dish that will redefine how good you thought rice could be. I'm talking about rice pilaf. To get started, I'll grab a whole peeled onion and then grate it on the largest hole sides of my box grater. This gives the onions a super small form factor that essentially melts them into the background of the dish. Next, I'll grab 4 to 5 large garlic cloves and then smash those through my garlic press. These should have just about the same meltable texture as the onions, and in total I need 100 grams of onion and 20 grams of garlic. Next, I'll need some pasta. I've got angel hair here because its cook time is roughly equal to that of the rice. You could go for spaghetti as well, but you'll need a touch more liquid and maybe a couple extra minutes of cook time. Now I'm going to take 75 grams of this angel hair and snap it into roughly 1-inch pieces. The pasta part of this pilaf is surprisingly what gives this dish most of its signature nutty flavor, mainly because of how it's cooked, but more on that in just a second. Once I've got all 75 grams of this pasta snapped down, I'll grab the main event, the rice. For pilaf, I prefer a classic jasmine style rice because it's fragrant, it cooks evenly, and it cooks in a predictable amount of time. Now to prep this rice for the pot, I'll rinse it thoroughly with cold water to remove as much of the excessive starch on the outside as possible. For this dish, extra starch is mucho bad. It will lead to a gluey, mushy result. And once the water is running clear like this, I'm good to go. Now, let's cook this thing. My cooking vessel of choice for this dish is a heavy bottom pot. I'm using a 6.5 quart Dutch oven here, but anything that transfers heat slowly and evenly to food will work totally fine. And once it's hot, in goes 75 grams of butter. I'll let that melt. Then in goes my broken angel hair pasta. From here, I'll fry it in the butter for about 2 to 3 minutes over medium heat. I'm looking to toast the starch inside this pasta until it's taken on a light chestnut color. This toasted pasta and lightly browned butter are going to team up to provide the backbone of flavor for this dish. Next, I'll add in all of my rinsed rice, then stir to combine and fry this for another 2 to 3 minutes, making sure not to take this pasta from deliciously brown to burnt and bitter. By the way, frying the raw rice in fat like this pre-gelatinizes some of the exterior starch. That gives us more individualized rice grains that stand out in the final dish and have a denser, slightly chewier texture. Now, once this rice is fried until translucent, I'll add in my onions and garlic, 12 grams of salt, and then I'll jump in and give everything a quick stir to get things cooking. From here, I'll give these aromatics another 3 to 4 minutes to soften them over a gentle medium heat. Now, once these onions are sweat like this, I'll come back and add in 20 grams of better than bouillon roasted chicken base because the 650 grams of store-bought chicken stock that I'm adding in right now doesn't have very much chicken flavor at all. It's mainly useful as a vegetable stock. It's kind of like a mirepoix flavored tea. Next, I'll bring things up to a gentle simmer, then turn the heat down to low, pop on a lid, and then set a timer for 15 minutes. And after a 15-minute simmer over low heat, I'll come back, kill the heat, and set a timer for 10 more minutes. At this point, do not open the lid. Once the lid is down, it needs to stay down to allow the rice to swell slowly and evenly. And after 25 minutes of cook time, I'll come back and take a quick look.
Oh my God, that smells so good.
Now, I'll just flip this rice a little bit so that I can cool it off and slow down the cooking. Then I'll finish by adding in a long squeezer of fresh lemon juice, then a couple dashes of chopped fresh parsley. Finally, I'll just fold all that together gently, making sure not to smush up this perfectly cooked rice. It's tender but toothsome and just a little bit chewy.
It's so toasty and nutty, but it's still bright. You got the parsley and a little bit of lemon in there. And dude, it's just shockingly delicious tasting rice. It's perfect.
Okay, up next is a vibrant, sharp-edged Puerto Rican dish that uses a ton of fresh aromatics and cilantro. It's called Sofrito Rice. To make it, I'll grab my food processor and combine 250 grams of very roughly chopped onion, 75 grams of chunked up poblano pepper, 20 grams of garlic, 20 grams of cilantro, and then 5 grams of cumin. Next, I'll just spin that up for about 20 to 30 seconds or until the veggies are chopped down into a small but coarse texture. It should look almost like a fresh salsa. But Bri, I don't have a food processor. What the heck, bro? Well, you could definitely use a knife to break this down. It would take about 5 minutes of elbow greasing. You can do it. Now, once my sofrito is all chopped up, I'll grab 400 grams of rice. For this dish, I'm using a chunky medium grain rice because I really like its creamy, starchy texture. I find it absorbs the tomatoey cooking liquid a lot better than longer, thinner rice. That stuff gets kind of brittle and breaks down when cooked in a thicker broth like we are for this dish. Next, same as before, I'll just give this rice a quick rinse to remove any excessive starch. Now, to cook this thing, I'll grab my Dutch oven yet again and drop it over medium heat. Once it's hot, in goes 50 grams of olive oil, then all 400 grams of my rinsed rice. Now, for the same reason as I did for the pilaf, I'm gonna fry this rice in the fat to help establish separate, singular grains that stand out texturally from one another in the final dish. This is especially important for this starchy medium grain rice. It can get a little bit clumpy. Next, in goes all of my chopped sofrito and then 12 grams of salt. From here, I'll stir in the sofrito and then cook it down for 5 to 6 minutes. I want to soften the onions and peppers here and cook off some of the raw edge of the herb and garlic. I also want to cook off excessive onion water because there's a lot of it and that will make our rice soggy and overcooked. Next, in goes 30 grams of tomato paste. I'll stir that in and then fry it with the aromatics so that I can open up its flavor. That'll take about 2 to 3 minutes. And once the paste has reached this beautiful rusty color, I'll add in 550 grams of chicken stock, then 1 small can or 225 grams of tomato sauce. Of course, if you don't want to make your own fresh sofrito from scratch, you could sub in this sofrito base from the sponsor of this video, Better Than Bouillon. You guys, I've been using Better Than Bouillon products in my recipes on this channel for forever, basically. Better Than Bouillon, Better Than Bouillon, Better Than Bouillon, Better Than Bouillon, Better Than Bouillon beef paste. Aside from this delicious and cool sofrito base, Better Than Bouillon's roasted chicken and roasted beef bases are my favorite products to make quick, flavorful broths. But you can also use them as a general flavor enhancer, as I've done many times on this channel. Recently, Better Than Bouillon has added the culinary collection into the mix with 4 new, and might I say, fun flavors that are super delicious and just as easy to use. They've got Italian herb, smoky chipotle, adobo, and the sofrito base that I mentioned earlier. You can find all the major flavors of Better Than Bouillon in the soup aisle of most grocery stores, but go to betterthanbouillon.com and you'll have access to all of the hot specialty flavors. They got mushroom base, sauteed onion base, and lobster base. To try these things, head to betterthanbouillon.com and use my promo code Brian at checkout for free shipping. Again, that's code Brian for free shipping. Back at the stove, I'm gonna bring this stock and tomato sauce up to a simmer, then I'll pop on a lid, lower the pot into a 350F oven, and bake it for 20 minutes. The oven is gonna impart some nice roasty Maillard browning into this rice dish that you just can't get when you're cooking on the stovetop. And after 20 minutes, I'll pull this pot out of the oven and let it sit. No, don't open the lid, bro. Just let it sit covered for 15 minutes so the rice can finish cooking. And after 35 minutes of total time, I'll pop the lid and take a look. Ooh, as you can see, this rice has a beautiful dark reddish orange color. The grains are distinctly separate and aren't broken or mushy at all. To finish, I'll drizzle in a little squeezer of fresh lime juice, then I'll add in roughly 10 grams of chopped fresh cilantro. The acid and the herbs here are going to bring some brightness and life to an otherwise pretty dark and very intense dish. And there we go. This may look like a humble Latin rice dish, but this stuff is sharp, spicy, and has an intensity to it that you rarely see in rice dishes.
You can taste every single granule of rice. It's tomatoey, and it's also a little bit spicy, and is way better than anything you've had at Taco Bell or a Mexican restaurant. It's so fresh.
Now, the last rice recipe uses some pretty weird techniques that I've actually never used before, and the final result is texturally the most interesting rice dish I've ever eaten.
Oh my God, that is so crispy.
Of course, I'm talking about the Persian dish, Tadig. This dish starts with 400 grams of long grain basmati style rice. Bonus points if you go to the international grocery store and get some of the imported Iranian stuff. That's what I have here, and it's what I call extra long grain rice. Once it's cooked, it holds itself together really well for being so skinny. Now, to start, I'll give this long grain rice a quick rinse to remove the excessive starch. Then I'll cover it with a fresh layer of water, about a liter's worth or 1,000 grams. Then I'll add in 10 grams of salt and stir everything to combine. And then I'll brine this rice for 1 hour. That's right, I said brine rice. That's something that I've actually never done before, but I found out that it's essential for getting the texture of this rice right. You'll see why in just a second. 1 hour later, this rice has absorbed some of that brine and now it's white, not that brownish tint that we started with. Next, I'll drain off all that starchy salt water, then grab a large pot of water and drop it on the stove to bring it up to a boil. While that comes up, I'll prepare the main seasoning ingredient for this dish, saffron. I'm a huge fan of the earthy, sweet, delicate, floral, pretty flavor of saffron. Yes, that's a lot of adjectives, but saffron is freaking complicated and it needs all of them. To get started here, I'm gonna grab the better part of a gram and then drop it into a mortar and pestle. From here, I'll grind that down into a saffron powder. This is gonna open up the aroma and help it dissolve into the hot water that we add in just a second. Over at the stove, this water is up to a ripping simmer. So to bloom out this saffron, I'll scoop about 100 grams or about a half cup of water right out of the pot and then drop it into the mortar. I'll let this bloom out for about 5 minutes while I cook my rice. Now, over at the pot of water, I'm gonna add in a lot of salt. I want this water to taste pretty freaking salty, like not quite ocean salty, but like the level of salty that your wife gets when you accidentally drop chocolate on the couch and then smush it in with your butt. Once salted, in goes all of my brined rice. From here, I'll boil this rice like pasta for 3 minutes. Boiling this combined with the soak hydrates this rice in a way that gives us super strong grains that can stand up to being stirred and fried. Now, after 3 minutes of boiling this rice like pasta, I'll drain off all of the water, then flip the rice into a medium bowl. From there, I'll add in my saffron water and then gently fold all of that together. At this point, the rice is like 95% cooked and is saturated with that beautiful, vibrant saffron flavor. Now, to crisp it up, I'll grab a 10-inch nonstick pan and drop it on the stove over medium heat. Once that's hot, in goes a long squiggle of olive oil, then 75 grams of butter. Next, in goes all of my saffron rice. I'll come back and spread that out in the pan, making sure to get that rice spread as flat as possible. Once the rice is all spread out, I'll come back and poke it with the butt end of my spatula to make about 10 3/4 of an inch holes. These allow steam to escape and helps keep this rice from overcooking and getting mushy. Once I'm all poked up, I'm gonna take the lid of this saute pan and wrap it tightly with a tea towel. This is gonna help keep the rice from drying out, and it's gonna absorb the steam that comes off the rice so it doesn't drip back into the pan, ruining the crispiness. So once I got this tea towel secured like this, I'll drop the towel lid on the pan, then lower the heat to low and fry this rice for 25 to 30 minutes. Crucially, every 3 to 5 minutes, you need to come back and move the pan so that you can get even browning. I learned this the hard way more than once. You gotta keep it moving, you guys. Also, if you're wondering, hey Bri, can I do this in a heavy bottom pot like a Dutch oven? Yes. You can technically, but it's much harder to get right. I did this 3 times in a Dutch oven and 2 of them did not work. Fuck. If that's all you got though, give it a shot. And after 30 minutes of slowly, patiently moving the saute pan around my stove, it's time to check on the rice. I like to determine doneness here mainly by smelling. The rice should have a distinct toasty smell that is verging on popcorn. Also, the edges should have separated from the pan a little bit and you should be able to see some browning there. That's also a good barometer.
Now we go for the moment of truth to see if I did this correctly the 3rd time. I'm gonna put something flat over the pan here, and then I'm gonna press it down as hard as I can and flip this over, keeping that pressure the whole time so that it doesn't fall apart. Be really careful for this part. Okay, it flipped out cleanly. Ooh, baby. Okay, I'm so nervous. Did I get it right? Is it brown but not burnt? Oh, yeah.
And that's a beauty of a rice dish, you guys. We've got a crispy dome and some nice golden brown color.
Oh my God. That is so crispy. It tastes like saffrony movie theater popcorn. And the crunch is actually very similar to like a partially popped popcorn kernel. I've spent the better part of a day figuring out this recipe, so I'm very confident in this technique. I tried 3 other ways that didn't work super great. This is the way. Anyone can make this and it's so delicious.
So that's 3 very good tasting rice dishes, along with some special techniques that I hope give you the confidence to make great tasting rice. Let me know in the comments which one of these dishes you're gonna make sometime soon. And if you wanna see another video packed with tested recipes and interesting techniques, check out this video for pan sauces. It'll really change the way you think about cooking fancy dinner at home. See you there.